While appearing on a show that lowers the collective IQ of the nation by at least one standard deviation, The View, Allie Wentworth, who is the wife of ABC News objective news anchor George Stephanopoulos, explained what election night was like at the Stephanopoulos-Wentworth home. Here's what it looked like.
And I have an 11-year-old daughter who doesn't really understand what ISIS is, but she knows that she's scared, and she's now sleeping in bed with us every night.
Yeah. So what do you do, Allie? What do you say? What do you do? You got little girls. You see what's happening. What can you say to other parents who are at their wits' end with their children, who are scared, and they're also scared as adults?
This is what I say. I say two things. I say to my kids, one is, we help out everybody in this country that is really going to need our help. Whatever in organization, we give, we volunteer, we help out. It involves my 14-year-old getting upset about the election and screaming no abortions really loudly.
I have a 14-year-old upset
and I was like,
well.
You haven't kissed a boy yet. Don't use that word so flippantly. But
Okay, let's just point something out. If you're wondering why the left have gone completely insane, perhaps it's because they were raised to be insane and now they're raising their kids the exact same way. Why in the world would a 14-year-old girl think that her world is ending because Donald Trump has been elected president? More importantly, why would she think her world is ending because of possible restrictions on abortion? She's 14. Are leftist parents truly raising their daughters to believe that their right to freedom is dependent on their ability to kill their own offspring in the womb? I'll raise my kids to believe that certain rights are sacred: the right to religious practice, the right to freedom of speech, the right to defend ourselves. The notion of teaching a little girl that abortion is the chief right women should expect from their government, or that their life is somehow inevitably impacted by laws cracking down on abortion, that's patently crazy. The fact that some leftists apparently teach their kids that liberty can be boiled down not to individual choice and responsibility for that choice, but to the ability to pay a clinic to kill a baby in the womb and then take it out, that's pretty disgusting. As the parent of a daughter, here's what I plan to tell her about abortion. I plan to say, sweetheart, when you get married and when you have sex and get pregnant, that will be the greatest joy you can experience. I know that because it was the greatest joy that your mom and I ever experienced. Your birth was the highlight of our lives. Your existence is a timeless reminder that God loves us and he loves you and that he favors us with miracles every day, none greater than your creation. You're beloved of God and your children will be too. Children are the greatest gift we can receive. To spurn that gift, to destroy another human life, is a great evil, no matter any countervailing concerns. Now here's the thing, we're religious, but even if we weren't, that lecture wouldn't change all that much. Children are the greatest thing in life, and they are lives regardless of whether you're religious or secular. And suggesting that true freedom lies in the ability to kill children in the womb, it's just disgusting. I mean, it's gross. Come on. Propagandizing 14-year-olds with that suggestion, that's even more gross. But if you tell your kids that evil Republicans are coming in the night to raid your womb, it's no wonder they get hysterical when Democrats lose elections. I'm Ben Shapiro. This is The Ben Shapiro Show. Alrighty, so much to get to today, so much leftist craziness out there. I mean, we've been focusing a lot on sort of the soul-sucking that's been happening in certain parts of the Republican Party, but there's so much that's crazy that's happening on the left, and we're going to get to that in just a second. But first, we have to say hello to our sponsors at Helix Sleep. So if you go to helixsleep.com/Ben, this is the place to go to get the most comfortable mattress in the world. We have one of these Helix Sleep mattresses, and they are just fantastic. The way that it works, you go to helixsleep.com, and they ask you for your height and weight and your body type and what kind of mattress you like sleeping on. Do you like it to absorb heat? Do you like it to be cool? Do you like it to be more firm or more soft? And they can even make mattresses that are different for the different sides of the bed. So if you or your partner have different sleep behaviors, then you can change the mattress that way. They then send it to your house in a giant box, and you unwrap the box, and it inflates. It's super cool. It's very, very comfortable. Apparently, they've done surveys, and they found that sleep quality increases like 30% based on sleeping on a Helix Sleep mattress. Really nice mattress. They run that 3D biomechanical model of your body through algorithms they've developed. And then if you don't like it, you can try it for 100 nights, and then you can send it back for free. If you don't love it, no questions asked for a 100% refund. So it's a great service, helixsleep.com/Ben. You get $50 off your order, helixsleep.com/Ben, and their prices are extraordinarily competitive, very, very reasonable. The quality of the mattress is really good, I know, because I sleep on one every single night. Okay, so as we mentioned, you just saw Allie Wentworth talk about her daughter, and it really is amazing how many people on the left teach their kids that Republicans are to be feared and hated because Republicans oppose abortion, because Republicans don't like babies being killed in the womb. And again, I think that children innately understand what kids are, and they innately understand there's a baby in mommy's tummy. I know this because right now we have a 7-month-old and we have an almost 3-year-old, and the 3-year-old knew all the way through the pregnancy that there was a baby in mommy's tummy. I mean, she used to walk around the house with a little doll under her shirt saying that she was pregnant just like mommy. Like, kids understand this, but adults are trained. They train themselves not to understand certain basic truths about life so that they can do what's convenient. This is making a nation of crazy people, and it really is dividing us along lines that don't need division. There was a question somebody put out on Twitter, must have been a few weeks ago, where they said, what's the thing where in 100 years people are going to look back on American politics and say, I can't believe that was even a debate? This is the one. This is the one. Because as science gets better, as we see into the womb better, it is clear to people what exactly is going on inside the womb, what happens in pregnancy, as more people become aware of it, people are going to see this for the evil that it is. Again, the idea of a 14-year-old running around screaming because she won't be able to get an abortion under Trump, number one, it's not true. Number two, even if it were true, how about mommy says to her, sweetheart, you're never going to want an abortion, and abortion is bad, and actually what you should be focused on is making good decisions in your life and not your ability to kill a baby. The idea that your lifestyle is compromised because you have a baby, it's stomach churning. I mean, the basic notion the left promotes with regard to abortion, that your lifestyle must be preserved at the cost of another human life, is really, really stomach churning. That's not the only stomach churning thing, though. The left proclaims itself a big fan of human rights, and the big news story of the day is what's happening in Aleppo in Syria. So Aleppo, as Gary Johnson well knows now, is a city in Syria. What is Aleppo? That's what it is. And Aleppo has been the site of a raging battle that's been taking place over the course of several months between rebels against Bashar Assad and the Assad regime. The Russians back Assad. The Russians have been lending support to Assad to go in and slaughter his own people. And the reports out of Aleppo are becoming increasingly insane. I mean, we're talking about, there was a report yesterday that 20 women had committed suicide in order to avoid being raped by Assad's forces. Apparently, there were 100 school children who were killed, but when they were suffocated under a building that was blown up by Assad's forces. The UN is saying that there's scores and scores of people who are civilians who are being killed in Aleppo. And the Obama administration is just devastated about this. And so they sent out Samantha Power, who's the UN ambassador, and who, by the way, wrote a book about American inaction during genocide. I mean, that's her claim to fame. Her actual book is about this, which is an incredible thing, right? I mean, the fact is that she was appointed specifically because of her unwillingness to stand by blindly, supposedly, when genocide was occurring. The book was called A Problem from Hell. It was a big bestseller back in 2002. And it explicitly talked about American inaction. It goes through all of the various genocides that have happened around the planet during the last 100 years and gets very upset with the United States for not stepping in. The New York Times Book Review talked about her book at the time, and it said, Washington is a place of defeatism, inertia, selfishness, and cowardice. Warnings pass up the chain and disappear. Intelligence is gathered and then ignored or denied. The will of the executive remains steadfastly opposed to intervention. Its guiding assumption is that the cost of stopping genocide is great, while the political cost of ignoring it is next to nil. And basically, she makes the case that we ought to be more interested in genocide around the world. Well, the Obama administration obviously didn't care about the genocide that was happening in Syria, and it is a genocide. I mean, you're talking hundreds of thousands of people dead. The latest estimate is 470,000 people dead in Syria. Several million have been exiled from Syria. The entire refugee crisis in Europe is largely due to what's happening in Syria. Obama, as you recall, he said that he drew a red line. If Assad had used chemical weapons against his own people, then Assad did use chemical weapons against his own people. And Obama said that he was going to take military action. There was blowback to that. Then he said he was going to do what John Kerry called a pinprick strike. It won't be heavy. It'll be tiny. It'll be like a needle. And then Putin comes along and says, you know what? I'll cut a deal on behalf of Bashar Assad. We'll get rid of some of these WMDs. They didn't. And we will make sure that Assad is kept under control. They didn't. And Obama jumps on that, and he says, sure, Vlad, you lead the way. You lead the way, Vlad. And Vladimir Putin says, excellent. And then he proceeds to enshrine Assad, work with Iran to enshrine Assad. Right now in Aleppo, you have the rebels, and on one side you have the Iranian militias who are going in there to slaughter everybody. On the other side, you have Assad's people who are going in there to slaughter everybody. And the Obama administration claiming all the way through that this is totally wild. How could this have possibly happened? Here is Samantha Powers, the lady who wrote this book, literally about American non-intervention during genocides. And she's being feted by the media. The media thinks she is just wonderful for doing this. I mean, talk about virtue signaling. Here she is.
Russia, Iran, and their affiliated militia are the ones responsible for what the UN called a complete meltdown of humanity. And they are showing no mercy. No mercy despite their territorial conquest. Even now, no mercy. In the last 24 hours alone, pro-Assad forces reportedly killed at least 82 civilians, including 11 women and 13 children. And it is up to each and every one of us here to defend those rules. To the Assad regime, Russia, and Iran, 3 member states behind the conquest of and carnage in Aleppo, you bear responsibility for these atrocities. By rejecting UN, ICRC evacuation efforts, you are signaling to those militia who are massacring innocents to keep doing what they are doing. Denying or obfuscating the facts, as you will do today, saying up is down, black is white, will not absolve you. To the Assad regime, Russia, and Iran, your forces and proxies are carrying out these crimes. Your barrel bombs and mortars and airstrikes have allowed the militia in Aleppo to encircle tens of thousands of civilians in your ever-tightening noose.
Okay, and so she is obviously condemning Russia, Iran, Syria. Only one problem. She sided with Russia, Iran, and Syria. Her administration sided with all 3 of those. They left Assad in power. The Hillary Clinton, you remember, Hillary Clinton called Assad a reformer. The media used to treat Assad with kid gloves. They used to pretend that he was a good guy in the region. Iran has been empowered massively by the same administration that cut a nuclear deal with Iran, giving them the capacity to broaden their economy, give them $150 billion, open their economy to the world, allows them to continue funding terrorism, including terrorism in Syria and in Iraq. And as far as Russia, obviously the Obama administration has been super warm toward Putin. They've allowed Putin to do anything that he could possibly want to do. They've allowed Putin to take over everything. And so the hypocrisy of the left when it comes to criticizing Russia is really amazing. The left is now ripping on Russia for what's going on in Syria. They're the ones who handed it over to Putin. And I want to point something else out here, too, and that is that there's this weird idea that has prevailed inside the Obama administration that you can shame bad people into doing good things. If you just shame them, then they'll do the right thing, right? You remember Michelle Obama with her Bring Back Our Girls hashtag. After Boko Haram, the terrorist group in Nigeria, kidnapped a bunch of schoolgirls, she held up that hashtag. Like Boko Haram cares what you hashtag. You remember that after Putin invaded Ukraine, Jen Psaki of the State Department, she tweeted, hashtag United for Ukraine. Did that get Putin out of Ukraine? Of course not. It didn't do anything. But this all extends back to the same mentality as Gandhi. So Gandhi was a big fan of nonviolent resistance. Back in 1938, he said this about the Jews. He said, if I were a Jew born in Germany, this is during the Nazi period, if I were a Jew born in Germany and earned my livelihood there, I would claim Germany as my home, even as the tallest Gentile German might, and challenge him to shoot me or cast me in the dungeon. The Jews of Germany can offer satyagraha, that's the passive resistance, under infinitely better auspices than the Indians of South Africa. Of course, that was inherently untrue because the British were not vile Nazis, and the Nazis were. In 1946, after he found out about the Holocaust, he continued to maintain this. He said, Hitler killed 5 million Jews. It is the greatest crime of our time, but the Jews should have offered themselves to the butcher's knife. It would have aroused the world and the people of Germany. They sort of didn't have a choice, and they were slaughtered by the millions. The idea that the world would have been aroused by knowledge of the Holocaust is nonsense. Everybody knew about the Holocaust while it was happening. The contemporaneous documents show that was the case, and the United States wouldn't even bomb the rail lines. So the idea that you can offer passive resistance to evil and that somehow suffices, that's ridiculous, but that's been the Obama administration policy all the way through. And yes, Putin is an evil man. Putin is a deeply evil human being who has not only expanded Russian borders at the expense of free peoples, he's also murdered dissidents, imprisoned dissidents, imprisoned people who are oligarchic, who he doesn't like, and then handed their money to other oligarchs that he does like, personally enriched himself to the tune of $40 billion, supposedly. He's taken measures to destroy lives all throughout the world. I mean, Vladimir Putin is one of the world's worst human beings. He really is one of the world's worst human beings. And the fact that the Obama administration is now calling him out after years of propping him up is truly hypocritical. Now, what's just as hypocritical is the Republican take on Putin. So there's a poll that came out today that is really quite disturbing. This is a poll from The Economist YouGov, and it talks about net favorability of Vladimir Putin among Republicans. So the net favorability of Vladimir Putin among Republicans in 2016, in 2014, July 2014, Republican net favorability for Putin, meaning the number of people who like him minus the number of people who hate him, was negative 66%. So it's probably like 10% liked him, 76% thought that Putin was evil. Today, December 2016, that is a negative 10%. So that means that 35% probably like him and 45% think that he's bad. Okay, that's not good, folks. That's not good. If you're one of these people who's gotten warm to Putin because you think that Putin was mean to Hillary and the enemy of my enemy is my friend, understand, he's not your friend. Vladimir Putin has now played 2 straight administrations. He played Bush. You remember Bush saying that he looked into Putin's soul? I looked into his soul. And he saw something good there. And it turns out that, McCain was actually right about this. He looked into Putin's soul and saw KGB. And then Obama came in and said, the thing about that Bush, he was too hard on Putin. Give him a reset button. Give him more power. Everything will be hunky-dory. And Putin proceeded to screw the United States once again and expand his power at our expense. And now Trump is doing the exact same thing. And you've got Republicans going right along for it. You've got Republicans going right along with it. And that's dangerous stuff. That's dangerous stuff. Putin is not a good man. Putin is not your ally. Putin is not the guy you can rely on to be a bulwark against the bad guys. He is one of the bad guys. If you want to say that there are alliances of convenience that you might be able to draw with Putin from time to time, that's one thing. But if you want to say that Putin is an actual ally in the war on terror, or you want to say that Vladimir Putin is the guy you're going to delegate foreign policy to, look, Putin knows what he's doing here, and he knows which buttons to push, and I think that it's only a matter of time before Putin makes a very aggressive move in Central Asia, talking about Kazakhstan, or he makes a strong move against Latvia or Estonia or Lithuania, and then he dares Trump to stop him, and the chances are Trump won't do anything. The chances are very strong that Trump won't do anything. The proof is in the pudding. Trump's selection of Rex Tillerson as CEO of Exxon. Tillerson, as I said yesterday, this isn't about Tillerson, it's about Trump. The only thing Trump cares about from Tillerson is presumably what Tillerson thinks of Putin, and Tillerson and Putin get along. Trump said this yesterday in Wisconsin. Here's what he said.
Rex is friendly with many of the leaders in the world that we don't get along with. And some people don't like that. They don't want him to be friendly. That's why I'm doing the deal with Rex, because I like what this is all about. And we're going to have somebody that's going to be very special.
Okay, so he likes the fact that Tillerson has relationships with some of the worst people on earth. This is Obama-esque language. Isn't it better that we should talk to Cuba? Isn't it better that we should hang out with the bad guys, that we shouldn't be talking with the bad guys? Wouldn't it be better if we were talking to Iran rather than not talking to Iran? This is not a positive development. It's not. And for all the people who are complaining about what's happening in Syria, Trump has no intention of doing anything in Syria to help people. Now, maybe you think that's good. Maybe you do. But the truth is that there are certain basic truths about foreign policy that very few people want to acknowledge. The most fundamental truth is that when it comes to a choice between genocide and American intervention, most people will choose genocide. And that's been true historically for the United States. We'd rather watch from abroad as a genocide happens somewhere than we would get involved. And that's a question that we ought to be asking ourselves, is what extent is the involvement necessary? Should that involvement include airstrikes, or should it also include boots on the ground? How much do we care about this? And if we're not honest with ourselves about this question, more people are going to die while we dither around. But clearly, Trump doesn't care particularly much. Here's Donald Trump spokesperson Jason Miller. He asked about Vladimir Putin's involvement in Syria. Now, do we have that? No, we don't have that. Okay, well, he said earlier, that hundreds of thousands of people in Syria being killed, we were viewing that through the wrong lens. That's what he said on Fox News a little bit earlier today. We should view that through a different lens. It's, again, no, we shouldn't. Something is really bad happening, and you can say that we don't have the wherewithal, or we don't have the resources, or we don't have the will to stop it. But to pretend that Obama's awful about Syria and then pursue exactly the same policy and actually warm to Trump is more than a little bit hypocritical. The same thing is happening, by the way, about Russian hacking, of course. The real reason that Republicans shifted on Putin is not because they thought that Putin was fighting ISIS. Okay, the real reason that Republicans shifted on ISIS is the same reason they shifted on WikiLeaks. When WikiLeaks was targeting the American military, we hated WikiLeaks. Then it started targeting Hillary, and a lot of Republicans said, hey, WikiLeaks, they're great. They now have, by the way, they went from a 47% net unfavorable rating among Republicans in 2014 to a net 27% favorable rating among Republicans now, WikiLeaks. They still are releasing American military information, but we're cool with that because they're serving our purposes. Again, this just goes to show you that most people down deep don't really care about anything remotely approaching intellectual honesty. They care much more about, does it serve my interests, does it not serve my interests? And that's true also of the Russian hacking. So long as the Russian hacking, we think, helped Trump, it's okay. If the Russian hacking had helped Hillary, we'd be over the moon about it. It'd be the end of the world. We'd be losing our minds. But if you're Bob Corker, right, the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, a guy who's become sort of an ally of Trump, he says that there's no reason we should have our hair on fire about Russian hacking.
I'm assuming that plenty of people are attempting to listen to my phone calls. I mean, that's the way intelligence is gathered. So the hacking piece is I mean, I don't think we ought to have our hair on fire about that. I'm sorry. I mean, that's what people do. It's what you do with that. And,
Right.
I mean, we need to guard against it. We need to do everything we can to make sure that it doesn't happen. And certainly in our office, we're doing everything we can to make sure that our computer systems are not hacked. And
Right.
this is obviously raising alarms for everyone. But at the end of the day, trying to understand what Russia is doing, not only here in the United States, but in elections around the world, is an important thing for us to know, right?
But we shouldn't have our hair on fire about it, right? We should just, I don't even know what that means. And I'm not sure, I would like to see Bob Corker's hair on fire just for the thrill of the fun of it. I mean, just the deputy dog of him running around with his hair on fire, still speaking with the slow cadence would be amusing. But we have to sign off here, but there's a lot more to come. We are going to talk about some good things that Donald Trump has been doing. The man obviously has tremendous personal magnetism, and we'll talk about the evidence of that at dailywire.com to view the rest of the show. You subscribe there, $8 a month. If you subscribe now, you get an annual subscription. You get a free copy of my book, True Allegiance, signed by me. And we do have a Daily Wire store coming in the very near future, and you'll get discounts there. We have all sorts of goodies coming for members. dailywire.com for that, or you can listen later at iTunes and SoundCloud and YouTube and check us out there. We are the largest conservative podcast in the United States.